Hello, this is me, Martin de Vos, and I just finished playing another tournament today, which is called the ELO Sommer Open, and it was played in Hennef, which is like half an hour from Cologne, more or less, roughly. It was a 5-round tournament, and it was being played as an accelerated Swiss system. Normally, or a lot of the tournaments are played in the normal Swiss system, which means that all the participants are divided in two halves, and then number one from the upper half is playing against number one of the second half, and so on. But with the accelerated Swiss system, in round number one, they did 4 groups, and within those groups they would do this. And then in the second round, the same thing happens, but you are not paired with someone necessarily that has the same amount of points. And then from round 3 on, it's normal Swiss system. So this is a bit complicated, and I wasn't aware of that. It was my first tournament with the accelerated Swiss system, and the pairings of the people are just completely different. So, but this is number one, and it is 122 participants, I think, and I was seeded at 56, I think. So normally I would have played against someone from the bottom in the first round, but with the accelerated Swiss system I played someone that he's called Jürgen Neubauer, and his rating is 2114, and I had the black pieces. So he played e4, the Sicilian, and I played c5, knight of 3, g6, hyper accelerated dragon. So unfortunately he didn't play d4. He played bishop c4, and I played bishop g7, and he castled. So this is the setup actually that I dislike the most. I think it's not something really specific, I don't know, but I just don't like it, and I'm used to playing the e6 line, and I don't know if I will do this again. Maybe I will change opening a little bit, but he replied with d4, knight took, he took with the knight, and here you actually have to play a6, because if you don't, for example, if I play knight c6, which looks very normal, then there's knight b5, and his threat obviously is to go knight d6, check. And I would then, to defend against this, have to do bishop e5. And then he can play f4, and then I have to go bishop b8. And I don't like that, because my bishop belongs on g7. And I really don't like this. So there's no knight c6 in that position. Obviously with playing e6 I don't want to play d6. Maybe there is, just a second, maybe there's a better variation with knight e7, because it helps play d5. But there is a trick for white in this position actually. So there's knight b5, and now to defend against knight d6 check, there might be d5, but unfortunately that doesn't work, because he can take on d5, and then it doesn't matter if pawn takes or knight takes, because he's just going to take with the bishop, and now queen takes doesn't work because of knight c7 check, winning the queen. So knight takes, but then the trick is queen takes d5, and then after queen takes d5, knight c7 check, forking king and queen. And this position has actually been played more than once, but I wouldn't call it theory. Black is down a pawn, and black has lost castle rights, and there is a threat of knight c7. But I mean, you can defend with knight a6 maybe. But black has the bishop pair, so I mean, maybe this is maybe this is just better. I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's at least 0.9 or something, says the engine, so it's worth a pawn. I mean, but black's down a pawn, so I don't know. I completely don't like this as black, so that's why I played a6, and that's theory. So my opponent played a4, which is not theory. But I mean, yeah, maybe he was afraid of me playing b5 and then developing with bishop b7. So a4 stops that. I mean, this looks normal. I mean, so I could play d5 here, I think, but it doesn't seem normal to play d5 here because I haven't castled yet, and I haven't even developed my knight. But I think in this position I have time to play knight c6 now, because there is no knight b5, right? Because we have already played a6. And I'm attacking his knight, so he either retreats his knight to whatever square, or he defends it with either bishop e3, which he did, or with c3, which I don't like. So bishop e3 seems completely normal, and now I can develop my other knight. I don't like to develop it to f6 because of maybe e5. I mean, not in this position, but depending on certain things, I think the knight might be better placed on e7. So I played knight g e7. Then he developed with knight c3, and now I castled. And again, I could have played d4, d5 before, but I think, well, just castle. I mean, can't be that bad, right? So he played queen d2, and one of his plans might be to play bishop h6. But I thought, well, okay, I mean, we are not playing a King's Indian or whatever, or Perk or something, where white castled queenside. So we castled to the same side. So, I mean, if he wants to exchange his bishop for my bishop, and my bishop is like my good bishop, obviously that's a good trade for him. Also, my bishop is one of the only defenders of my king, but whatever. So I don't care about him playing bishop h6. So I'm not playing rook e8 here, and then after bishop h6, bishop h8 or something. I just play d5 because now I have time. I mean, I prepared it with e6 and knight g7, so it was time to play d5. And I think that's alright. There's a downside to playing this, but there's also, I mean, ideas of playing it. I mean, I have to free myself. I need to occupy the center, at least in some way, and I choose with playing d5. So he took on d5 with the pawn, and I take with the pawn. Maybe it's even better to take with the knight, but I don't think so. Also, taking with the pawn opens up my bishop to whatever square, and if he ever takes on c6, I can actually take with the pawn and reinforce my d-pawn so that my d-pawn is no longer isolated, but also creating another pawn island. Then I would have 3 pawn islands. Those two, my isolated a-pawn, and the other 3, where white only has 2 pawn islands, one on the king side and one on the queen side. So this is not the perfect structure you would want, but yeah, I'm fine him exchanging one more piece sets. That is actually fine for me, because I mean, if we trade, it gets more draws. So yeah. So he played bishop b3, and now I made a mistake. If I get to this position again, I'm pretty sure I would play rook e8, and then maybe something like rook fe1. It's not forced variation, just a variation, and then just bishop e6. And now, I mean, obviously, but white is better, obviously, because it's white and black's fighting for equality. But I think this position is kind of alright for black. I mean, there's no immediate kingside attack. I'm not getting mated here. I'm not down material. I do have an isolated pawn, and my bishop is not so great on e6, but it seems to be rather solid. I don't know if it is, but it might be. So I didn't play rook e8, which I might in the future. And I did a mistake. I played knight f5, which is not good. It's now white is almost winning, unfortunately. So he takes on f5, freeing up his queen. Yeah, and also now my d-pawn is not protected enough times. So I take back with the bishop, and then he takes on d5. He took with the knight. He might also take with the bishop, which doesn't make too much sense because I might take on c3 in some cases. So he takes with the knight on d5, and maybe I should now try to do something active. I took on b2 with my bishop to win back my pawn, let's say, because else I would be down a pawn. But I think there might be some better ways. But I did take on b2, and he moved his rook to d1, which is a very good move, I think. So I think now the threat is c3, and then my bishop is cut off. It cannot come back to g7 or to the king side. So all of my squares are very weak then. That's why I immediately played bishop back to g7, which might not be too great, but I mean, yeah, I need this as a defending piece. He did a not so great move, I think. I'm not exactly sure what he should do. Maybe he can play bishop g5, maybe he can play queen c1 or whatever. Maybe there's some better moves, I don't know. But he played bishop c5, and I was kind of relieved. Unfortunately, not really. The thing is, I can play rook e8 now, and it feels kind of alright, because I think the other positions are better for white. So this is kind of okay for black. Although I did make the mistake with knight f5. And now my opponent also made a mistake, which is he played f4. So f4 does some things, and I wasn't sure about all of this at the moment in the beginning. But this is actually kind of alright, and now I'm kind of equal. Not completely, but I mean kind of. Weirdly enough, queen h4 is kind of the move that should be played. My queen needs to come to a better square, and if he tries to win like the exchange or something, I can just move my rook over and attack his queen, and then I would not lose the exchange. So that's what could be done. So queen h4 is actually completely fine. I did play rook c8, and this pretty much ends the game. I did play a little bit more, but the big problem is that he has to move queen f2, and that's one of the reasons why he played f4. So f4 makes this move even possible, which I didn't understand at that time. So this is a multi-purpose move, the f4 move, although it's not so great, but yeah. but after rook c8, he played queen f2, and now my queen doesn't have any squares. That's the problem, because queen f2 is protecting the h4 square, and all the other squares are taken by the white pieces, except for a5. But a5 is kind of the wrong direction for my queen. That's number one. I don't want to play queen a5. Also, I cannot stay on these squares. I mean, this I can't play queen d7 because knight check and rook takes queen. So here's a discovered check there. But if I move to a5, the problem is that after something like bishop b6, again my queen doesn't have any squares, and I'm losing my queen. All these squares are taken. I can't move there, and I cannot move backwards, and I cannot move to these squares because they are all taken. So my queen has no squares, no secure squares. That's why I decided to play king h8, so that the discovery would not be a check, so that there's no check, and then I can react to the threat. So he played knight b6. I can move my queen. With moving the knight, he gave me one square. Like, I mean, he actually gave me two squares, but I moved to f6 with my queen. He took on c8, I took on c8, and then he played rook d6. So he attacks my queen again. Not the first time that in a game my queen is attacked and attacked and attacked all over again. So I play queen c3, which is pretty much the only square. And then he just doubled rooks. So I'm down the exchange, and I'm feeling not good in this position at that time, and I just didn't really know what to do. I don't know. So I don't know why exactly, but I played the move h5 so that I could go there with my king in some cases. And also, I don't see a nice way to defend my f7 pawn. So I don't want to defend my f7 pawn. I feel like I have to do something else. This position is losing, so white's already winning because white's up material, and my queen is not good on there, and he's doubled rooks on the open file, so I'm losing here. But I played h5, and he took on f7, which kind of surprised me, but all right. So I took on c2 with my queen, and he exchanged queens, and then I took on c2. And now his rook is attacked, and he moved his rook to d2, and I was able to take on a4. That's kind of forced after bishop takes f7, queen takes c2, queen takes c2, bishop takes c2, rook 1 to d2, and bishop takes a4. So now I kind of managed to convert my position into a position where I'm down the exchange, but I have a pawn for it, and I have two connected passed pawns. Unfortunately, my pawns are not really far advanced, so it's going to take a long time until I can queen them, which is never going to happen because I'm losing this position, obviously. But he played bishop b6, so that I would not really be able to advance my pawns. So he's kind of blockading my pawns by doing this. But the move is actually not so great, but I mean, it's actually also not such a bad move, because not only does it block my pawns, it also freezes my knight, because I cannot move my knight now, really. I mean, maybe I can do something like this, but the threat would be rook check, rook takes, again check, and then I have no really good squares. That's actually a benefit of moving my h pawn before. Yeah, I mean this is just freezing my knight, so I can't move now because I can't trade this rook. If I trade this rook and he gets behind my pawns somehow, because my knight has already moved, there's no way I can hold this position. So I played bishop c3, attacking his rook, which at first sight seems kind of alright. So he doesn't have a lot of squares, right? All these squares are taken by my pieces. I don't know. So it's kind of yeah. I mean, the obvious move is kind of rook 2 to d3, attacking my bishop. And now I thought that I could defend my bishop by moving my knight, so that now my bishop is protected by my rook, and I'm also attacking his rook. And now I actually control all the squares of that file. So I was thinking, or let's say hoping, that I might be able to get him off of this file somehow, and then I could actually do something maybe. The problem is that he can just take on c3, and I resigned, because obviously it doesn't matter if I take the rook or not. He has this check, and then he's winning the rook. So in that position I'm down a rook. And before it was, in this position it's only the exchange and a pawn. Like I'm down a knight and a pawn versus the rook. So that's round number 1. I played against Jürgen Neubauer, 2114, and I lost. So that's my analysis for round number 1, and see you soon. Bye.